In this video, I will discuss the division property of equality. This property states that if A equals B, then A divided by C equals B divided by C, where C cannot equal 0. Let's take a look at this statement. A equals B just represents any equation. A is the left-hand side and B is the right-hand side of any equation. If you divide both sides of that equation by the same number, then that doesn't change the equation in any way. It actually just keeps it equal. But what I want to look at is this C is not equal to 0. Why is C not able to be equal to 0? Well, notice we have A divided by C is equal to B divided by C. When you have a denominator of a fraction, that is never going to be equal to 0. And the reason is because you can never divide by 0. The denominator of a fraction kind of also represents division. You're dividing A and B by C, and you are not able to divide by 0. If you plug it into your calculator, you'll notice you get an error, which is why C can never be equal to 0. Starting with this first example, we have 1.3z equals 5.2. When we solve equations, we're trying to get the variable by itself, which means we're trying to get z all by itself. Z is being multiplied by 1.3. If you need to, you can draw a little multiplication symbol in there. If you're multiplying your variable by a number, you want to divide by that same number because division and multiplication are opposites. So we want to divide by 1.3. Thinking back to the property we just talked about, if you divide one side of the equation by a number, you must also divide the other side of the equation by the same number. This will keep the equation balanced and true. Now we can go ahead and simplify both sides. The left-hand side, we can cancel out the 1.3's and we're just going to be left with z. On the right-hand side, we have 5.2 divided by 1.3. That's going to be equal to 4. Now that the variable is by itself, we have our solution, z equals 4. If you want to go ahead and check your answer to make sure that you did it correctly, you can rewrite the equation. And since we found that z was equal to 4, we can plug in 4 for z. Make sure in this case to put it in parentheses because we don't want to get that mixed in with the 1.3 and think that it is equal to 1.34. So now we can go ahead and simplify. We have 1.3 times 4. That's going to be equal to 5.2. So 5.2 is equal to 5.2, which means that our original solution we found, z equals 4, is the correct solution. In this example, you'll notice that we're using pi. Pi is just a symbol that represents 3.14 and so on, infinitely many decimal places. It represents a number. You could think of it as just representing 3 and something like that. So in this problem, we're actually going to focus on our variable x. When we solve this problem, we're actually multiplying pi and x together. So again, just like the last example, if we're multiplying our variable by a number, we want to divide by that same number to undo that multiplication. And whatever you do to one side, you must do to the other side. So we have to divide the left-hand side by pi as well. Because pi just represents a number, if this was just 3 over 3, we could cancel out those 3's. We're going to do the same thing here. We can cancel out those pi's. Pi divided by pi is just equal to 1. And we can do that on the right-hand side as well. The left-hand side will be left with just that 9, and the right-hand side will be left with x. Now, if you want to, you can rewrite this answer with the x on the left-hand side. Both of those are correct. It doesn't really matter which way you write it, whatever way you're comfortable with. So now that we have the variable by itself, we have solved the equation. But what we want to do is plug that back in just to make sure we did it correctly. So we have 9 pi equals pi x. And since we said that x was equal to 9, we can plug that in for x. Now, since these are just being multiplied together, we actually can switch the order. Order does not matter for multiplication, So we can rewrite that as 9 pi. So yes, 9 pi is equal to 9 pi. They're the exact same thing, which means that 9 is the solution to our equation. To sum up the division property of equality, if you have any kind of equation, if you decide to divide one side of the equation by a number, you must also divide the other side of the equation by that same number, or else the equation is no longer true and it kind of changes what the equation is. And we also have to remember that that number that we're dividing by can't be equal to 0 because we're not allowed to divide by 0. And that's the division property of equality.